Hey everyone! ChatGP Taylor aka Taylor here. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we will be continuing the What If series, where I go over some hypothetical scenarios from Disventure Camp that could have taken place if one critical event was changed. Last time, we took a look at what would have happened if there was a regular immunity challenge in episode 14 of season 3 instead of a purge challenge. Today's video will look at something different. If there are any specific what if scenarios that you would like to see me play out in the future, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. And with that, let's get started. Before I begin, make sure to like and subscribe if this video is to your liking, and make sure to comment down below if there's anything that you would like to see going forward. The topic for today's video is something that I've seen mentioned in the comments in several different videos, and in particular, a viewer named Who Is Inverted commented on it in the previous What If video. And that topic is, what if the Heroes Alliance didn't vote out Yul in episode 13 of season 3? As a refresher, episode 13 of season 3 had the Villains Alliance of Alec, Rhea, Grett, Gabby, and Yul holding a majority over the Heroes Alliance of Connor, Jake, Ali, and Aiden. However, Yul's poor treatment of Grett and his immoral attack on Gabby during the VR challenge set forth a chain of events where Grett officially dumped Yul. Grett and Gabby flipped on Yul and voted for him at the next elimination ceremony, and the heroes joined Grett and Gabby to send Yul out by a vote of 6-3. We know what happened next. Gabby was purged out in the next challenge. Grett used her strategic skills to orchestrate Aiden and Alec's eliminations, which then caused Grett to get targeted and eliminated at the final 5, and then Rhea went on to win the season. However, I've seen a lot of people question why the heroes didn't keep Yul in the game and instead vote for a different villain like Alec or Rhea. After all, not only would this keep Grett and Yul in the game to target each other over the heroes, but it also serves as revenge for an earlier ceremony where the villains blindsided Ashley in order to keep Jake and Aiden in the game to target each other. Well, let's find out what happens in this scenario. Since Yul's actions caused the Villains Alliance to split 3-2, with Alec, Rhea, and Yul voting for Connor, while Gabby and Grett vote for Yul, this means that the 4-person Heroes Alliance has the numbers to vote for a third option and send them home by a plurality vote of 4-3-2. But who do they send home? Well, since the goal is to keep Grett and Yul in the game to go after each other, this means that there are 3 options for the heroes to choose from: Alec, Rhea, and Gabby. Now, I think you could make the argument for any of these 3 being voted out. However, I think the likely option and the option that's best for the story is for the Heroes Alliance to pile their votes on Rhea. From a personal standpoint, we know that Aiden rightfully holds a grudge against Rhea for letting him dangle off a cliff in the season 2 finale, and we know that at this point, Connor was ready to get revenge on Rhea for treating him badly. And to quote Connor in episode 12, he wanted to wipe that smug grin off Rhea's face. So, those 2 would definitely want to take their shot at Rhea, and I think Jake is indifferent enough towards Rhea that he would agree to it too. Ali might be a little hesitant since Rhea did give her the flag in the previous episode, but this is also before the tensions between Jake and Ali came to a boil, and it's not like that conversation caused Ali to flip immediately afterwards. So, I think Ali would come around to voting Rhea out. And honestly, eliminating Rhea prevents the whole Connor getting injured and Rhea looking sad at the camera plot from happening, which might be a good thing. Therefore, I think it makes sense for Rhea to get blindsided by a 4-3-2 vote over Connor and Yul, forcing her to leave the game in a fit of rage. For episode 14, the campers get paired up for the TikTok challenge. Since the pairings are seemingly not random and each pairing has some sort of unique connection, I think it makes sense for Yul to take Rhea's spot as Aiden's partner, since Yul also almost killed Aiden back in season 2, just like Rhea. Do I think this will hurt the pairing's ability to work together? Well, since Aiden was able to work with Rhea in canon despite her nearly killing him, I don't think Yul's near attempt on his life would prevent Aiden from working with him either. The only way this pairing falls apart is if Yul hates Aiden enough to want to sabotage him, or if Yul refuses to do the TikTok dances due to their cringiness. But I don't think either of those things happen. Sure, Aiden's boyfriend may have poisoned Yul, but I don't think that hate extends to Aiden necessarily, since Yul did support Aiden in the season 2 finale. And I know that the other options were Rhea and James, but it's not like Rhea was obscenely horrible to Yul in that season. The worst thing that she did was send him to the orange team. And as for the dances, since Grett mentioned that her and Yul had a TikTok account, and due to Yul's status as a dancer, I don't think it's very likely that Yul outright refuses to do the dances. So, I actually feel comfortable saying that Yul and Aiden end up finishing the challenge in first place, just like Aiden and Rhea did in canon. And elimination-wise, I don't think anything changes. Grett and Gabby still finish in last place, and Gabby is eliminated due to the phone with her TikToks being lost in the lake. Sorry Gabby, but I can't save you here. But before we move on, there's one thing that I want to mention that does change. In the canon episode 14, Jake and Aiden tell the entire cast that Rhea and Alec kissed. However, Aiden mentioned in a confessional that he wanted to reveal the kiss so that the villains' alliance would officially be destroyed and cancel out the fact that both alliances have 4 members. But because in this universe, the villains' alliance is pretty much already destroyed due to Grett and Yul's breakup, I think there's a chance that Aiden holds back this information, at least for now. Especially since in canon, Aiden was worried about revealing this information due to Connor's potential reaction. So I don't think he would do it unless he absolutely needs to. Don't worry, though. This will come into play later on. For episode 15, I want to start by mentioning one major pre-challenge event. And this event is the discovery of the hidden immunity totem. In this scenario, I actually don't think anything changes. Since Grett canonically couldn't get the totem on her own, she still needs to find a way to use this information to her advantage. And since Gabby is still gone in this timeline, I think she tells Jake and Connor about the totem, hoping that she can leverage this gesture later on in the game. This results in Connor grabbing the totem for himself, just like in canon. The only way that this doesn't happen is if Yul stalks Grett all day, sees her climb the tree with the totem, and then quickly grabs it before she can return with Connor and Jake. However, I'm not confident enough to say that this would happen, so I'll just let the canon event stay as is. Now, we get to the challenge. I want to start by saying that this challenge was such a pain to analyze. Since Rhea is gone in this timeline, I literally had to go question by question to figure out how this impacts where each person directs their questions, as well as which questions are asked. Now, I understand that some of you might not want to see the entire explanation, so don't worry, I'll include a short explanation and a long explanation that you can skip. The short explanation is that Yul wins this challenge, because I don't think Yul will lie very often. I expect most of the questions that are directed towards Yul to be attempts to call out his problematic behavior. But if anyone asks Yul if he realizes how problematic his behavior is, Yul will say that he doesn't believe that he is problematic, and he won't be penalized for it because he genuinely believes that he's in the right. It doesn't matter that he's objectively a horrible person. Because he genuinely believes that he's right, he can't be penalized. That's why I think he wins. But now there's the long explanation where I go question by question to show how the challenge plays out. If you don't want to see this whole explanation, feel free to skip to this time posted here. Okay. Well, let's get started. I'll start by saying that there's an established order in which the campers ask questions. This order is Jake, Yul, Grett, Ali, Alec, Connor, and Aiden, assuming that Yul takes Rhea's spot in the rotation. To start, Jake still asks Grett about her favorite dish, and she gets caught in her first lie. Next, I think Yul asks Grett a question that she knows she'll try and lie about. Maybe Yul targets a deep insecurity that he knows from dating her. It's cruel, but Yul has no qualms about doing cruel things to Grett. The end result is that Grett lies for a second time, earning her a second set of weights. Now in canon, Grett asks Alec about his son. But since Yul is still here, I think Grett focuses on Yul and asks if he ever loved her, which Yul truthfully admits that he never loved her. Now, I know Yul had a brief smile when Grett hugged him in episode 2 of season 3, but Yul also said in episode 6 of season 3 that he was pretending to love Grett, so I'm more inclined to believe that Yul never loved her, so I think it's still read as a truth, earning Grett her third set of weights. And I know that in canon, Grett dropped her pole after receiving her third set of weights. But that happened after she carried her first set of weights for a long period of time, so I'm willing to wait until she gets her fourth set of weights before she drops out. The next 3 questions are the same as in canon. Ali asks Jake about his trauma dumping, and she gets some weights. Alec asks Aiden about dyeing his hair, and Aiden gets some weights. And finally, Connor asks Alec if he was genuinely trying to help him get over Rhea, and Connor gets some weights. But Aiden's question is where things change. Since Rhea is gone in this timeline, he can't ask Rhea if she's proud of being the villain of TV. But he does have something he can ask. Since Aiden didn't spill the beans on Alec and Rhea's kiss in this timeline's episode 14, he can now ask Alec if he and Rhea kissed back at the final night. And since Alec tried to stave off Aiden's attempt to spill the beans in canon, I think he probably tries to lie his way out of it, and ends up getting a set of weights as a result. And why would Aiden do this? Well, since Rhea is gone, he might view Alec as the next biggest threat as a villain. And additionally, since he mentioned earlier in the canon episode that he needed to start playing for himself, exposing Alec and Rhea's kiss could be his way of adding more drama that he can use to keep himself out of the spotlight. Moving on, Jake asks Ali about faking dating Hunter, and Jake gets a set of weights like he did in canon. This is followed by Yul targeting another one of Grett's insecurities, and Grett ends up getting her fourth set of weights after trying to hide her true feelings about it, causing her to drop out of the challenge. As for Ali, since she can't ask Rhea about wanting to help her, we'll move up her question about Ashley being proud of Jake, and Ali gets her second set of weights like she did in canon. Now it's Alec's turn, and since he doesn't have a canonical second question due to his early dropout in canon, I think it's reasonable for him to ask Rhea's question towards Aiden about who he prefers between Ali and Jake. After all, Alec must realize that he's in trouble due to the villains' alliance fracturing, so it would make sense to try and sow divisions in the heroes' alliance by making Aiden state who he prefers. However, Aiden does admit that he prefers Jake more, causing Alec to get his second set of weights, and causing Ali to question her place in the heroes' alliance, just like in canon. And since Alec didn't even make it past one set of weights in canon before dropping out, his second set of weights causes him to drop out here. Moving on, Connor targets Yul due to his disdain for him, and asks him if he's proud of his behavior, hoping to call out his problematic actions. However, because Yul genuinely believes that he hasn't done anything wrong, his answer is read as a truth, causing Connor to get his second set of weights, meaning that he'll drop out roughly 2 questions from now, just like he did in canon. Next, Aiden probably asks Yul another question to try and expose his poor behavior, especially since I can't imagine him targeting Connor, Ali, or Jake due to his alliance with them. But his attempts end with Yul giving a truthful, albeit objectively incorrect answer, causing Aiden to get his second set of weights, causing him to drop out, just like in canon. Next, Jake goes back to targeting Ali, and this time he asks her whether or not she ever intended to save him in the previous episode after he distracted the bear. The goal of this question is to call out Ali for leaving him to die. Now by this point, since Ali is probably fed up with Jake and is now in her phase of not wanting to care about what people think of her, I think she openly admits that she had no plan and left him to die. This response is read as a truth, earning Jake his second set of weights. And since this is the second question after Connor got his second set of weights, Connor now drops out, leaving Ali, Jake, and Yul as the remaining competitors. Now, since I don't think Yul really has any strong reason to question Jake, he probably asks Ali if she still cares about what the haters think of her. Now, I know she previously admitted to leaving Jake to die in an effort to prove that she didn't care what people thought of her, but this insecurity can't go away overnight, and I think deep down, she does still care a little bit about what people think of her. This means that if Ali tries to claim that she doesn't care, which I think will happen, Ali will get called out for lying, meaning that she gets her third set of weights, and she drops out, which is pretty much what happened in canon. This leaves Yul and Jake as the last two standing, with Jake having 2 sets of weights and Yul having no sets of weights. Honestly, I don't think there's any question that Jake could ask Yul that he would try and lie about. This is due to Yul's deluded belief that he's perfectly okay, as well as the fact that Yul doesn't really care about lying to spare other people's feelings. Therefore, I think regardless of what question Jake asks Yul, Yul will answer truthfully, Jake will get his third set of weights, and subsequently drop out, meaning that Yul's blunt honesty wins him immunity. With Yul winning immunity, who gets voted out? Well, I think Connor decides to lead the charge against Alec. Since Alec is in the villains alliance and also kissed Rhea, Connor would probably be motivated to try and get Alec out. Aiden probably wouldn't mind, since getting rid of Alec weakens the villains alliance and also keeps Grett and Yul in the game to target each other. Jake also probably doesn't mind, since he's pretty close with Connor and probably recognizes Alec's threat level. Meanwhile, Alec tries to save himself by going to Ali for help. Due to the clear animosity between Jake and Ali during the challenge, especially with the bear question, Alec proposes to Ali that he can help her take out Jake. And with Jake not having immunity, unlike in canon, Ali decides that this is her chance to take a shot at Jake, and joins Alec in voting for him. As for Grett, she would want to vote for Yul, but since he's immune, she needs another plan. This is where things get difficult. Because on one hand, she's logical enough to know that Connor, Jake, and Aiden are probably a tight trio, and that if she doesn't take one of them out now, they will make up 50% of the votes at the next ceremony, with the immunity totem as well. At the same time, she definitely doesn't want to associate with Yul at all, and her opinion of Alec probably isn't very high since he voted with Yul back in episode 13. But at the end of the day, even though Yul is still in the game, I think since Grett officially broke up with him, she would no longer feel under his control, and she would want to play the game in the way that she wants to. And in canon, she did this by making a deal with Ali to vote the way she wants to in exchange for a repayment of the favor down the line. This would mean that Grett votes for Jake as well. Yes, this means that she has to vote with Alec even though she doesn't like him. But to be fair, she also voted with Alec in the canonical episode 15 even though she chewed him out earlier in the episode, so I don't think it's unrealistic for her to do the same here. This leaves Yul as the swing vote. And even though I think he would prefer to vote for Connor due to his lingering hatred towards him, I think Alec could convince Yul to join them in voting for Jake. And Alec can do this if he manipulates Yul into thinking that by voting with Grett to take out Jake, he's showing Grett that she still needs his help. Alec doesn't actually believe that, but he knows that Yul is probably narcissistic enough to believe it, so he takes advantage of it. This means that Yul cast the decisive vote to send Jake packing by a vote of 4-3. Jake leaves shocked, with Aiden and Connor vowing to get revenge. For episode 16, most of the pre-challenge events stay the same, except with Aiden taking Jake's place in the lineup. Ali gloats to Aiden about blindsiding Jake, and Aiden assures Connor that he's becoming a better person. As for Grett, she still celebrates Jake's elimination with Ali, as well as assuring her that it was good that she gloated to Aiden. However, there would be a moment where Yul tries to convince Grett that she needs him in the game, which she rebuffs, much to Yul's disappointment. This is where Alex steps in and tries to gently coax Yul into being less confrontational, wanting to use him as a shield for the near future. Now for the challenge. With Aiden taking Jake's place in the challenge, I expect Ali and Aiden to bicker a little bit during the challenge. However, I don't expect Aiden to fixate on blocking Ali like Jake did, partially because I don't think he's strong enough to, but also because Aiden isn't as easily distracted as Jake, so I don't expect him to give up his chance at immunity just to stop Ali, especially since he's in danger of being voted out. Without anyone stopping Ali, I think it's possible for her to reach the puzzle station and possibly use her video game puzzle knowledge to help her win the challenge. However, considering how someone like Alex struggled with this simple puzzle, I'm not convinced that Ali's experience would actually help her. So, I'm just going to play it safe and assume that Grett still wins immunity. The only way that she doesn't is if Yul verbally harasses Grett during the challenge to the point that Grett loses confidence. But honestly, I'm not confident that Yul does that, and even if he does, I feel like Grett has enough confidence from pulling off Jake's blindside to brush off Yul's comments and win the challenge anyways. So yeah, Grett still wins immunity. So who gets voted out? Well, the majority from the previous ceremony probably meets up and agrees to put all 4 of their votes on one person. I suspect that they choose Aiden since they all have a motive to do so. For Ali, she argued with Aiden earlier in the day, so she probably wouldn't mind taking him out now. For Alec, if the conversation on the dock between Alec and Connor still happens and they repair their bond, I could see Alec wanting to keep Connor around as a potential ally, leaving Aiden as the only option for him to eliminate. And for Yul, even though I think he would prefer to have Connor leave, I don't think he would be too opposed to sending home Aiden. It's not like he likes Aiden or anything, he just doesn't despise him. And for Grett, she would agree in order to set up a bigger plan. In canon, Grett got her majority group to vote for Jake, and then told Connor to play his immunity totem on Jake so that Connor and Jake could take out Alec for her, without Grett getting blood on her hands. And in this timeline, I could see Grett pulling off something similar by telling Connor to play his totem on Aiden, which would cancel out the 4 votes on Aiden, allowing Connor and Aiden's votes to send home whoever Grett tells them to vote for. Which in this case, would be Yul, for obvious reasons. Connor and Aiden would agree to this plan, but I'm going to toy with the idea of Connor and Aiden not listening to Grett. After all, is getting rid of Yul really in their best interest? Wouldn't it be better to send home someone like Ali in order to get revenge for Jake? Or maybe it would be better to send home Alex since he's a clear strategic threat. And either of those 2 options would keep Grett and Yul in the game to argue for another day, keeping the target off of their back. However, since Connor and Jake followed Grett's orders in canon even though it probably wasn't the best game move for them, and when taking into account that neither of them are big fans of Yul anyways, I think Connor and Aiden stick to Grett's plan, which cancels out the 4 votes against Aiden, allowing their 2 votes to send Yul home in a blindside. And one more thing that I think is important to mention. In canon, Jake tried to get Connor to change his mind and play the totem on himself, likely out of paranoia due to the fact that in Season 1, Tom tried to save Jake with his immunity totem, but it ended up being a waste as Tom received the majority of the votes and was taken out instead. But since Aiden doesn't have that history, he probably doesn't speak up to get Connor to change his mind. And since Aiden doesn't speak up in this universe, Grett doesn't have to whisper to Aiden to stop him from speaking. And since Ali only got suspicious of Grett in canon because she whispered to Jake at the final 6 ceremony, if Grett doesn't whisper to Aiden, then there's no reason for Ali to suspect that Grett is playing both sides, meaning that Ali probably doesn't want to target Grett in the next episode. And that could change some things. For episode 17, not much changes in the pre-challenge. Aiden probably takes Jake's place and talks with Connor about each other's letters, and maybe Ali and Grett share their letters to each other and Ali gets a much better idea of what Grett goes through on a daily basis, bringing them closer together. As for Alec, I'm actually not sure what role he plays in the pre-challenge, and I don't even know who sends him a letter since I doubt his ex-wife wants to talk to him. Maybe his son sends him a letter and it makes him deeply regret how he treated him, causing Alec to open up to Connor once again. Connor then comforts Alec and offers advice to him, further strengthening their bond. Now let's move on to the challenge. Since Alec is here instead of Rhea, and Aiden is here instead of Jake, let's assume that Alec gets Rhea's horse and Aiden gets Jake's horse. And since Rhea didn't have a lot of success with her horse, Alec probably doesn't make it far in the challenge. You might say, oh, well what if Alec read a book on horse training before joining Season 3? Honestly, that's a bit of a far stretch, especially since Alec admitted in episode 13 that he lost his passion for reading after his divorce, so I don't think Alec will be able to control his horse long enough to get to the finish line. But on the plus side, since I don't think Alec is impulsive enough to kick the horse like Rhea did in canon, he probably doesn't go flying into the trees like Rhea did. And oddly enough, this change is important, because if Alec doesn't go flying into the trees, then Connor doesn't need to turn around and save Alec like he did to Rhea in canon. This means that Connor can maintain his lead with Aiden throughout the challenge. And one quick thing, I know that Aiden's fear of heights would probably make him hesitant to do the platforming section of the challenge. But since in canon, Jake's near fall at the start of this section likely caused him and Connor to move slower through this section, I don't think Aiden's hesitation will slow down him and Connor any more than Jake's near fall did in canon. Therefore, Aiden and Connor still probably maintain their lead over the other 3 campers heading into the final section of the challenge. And if it comes down to one final race between Aiden and Connor for immunity, I think Connor ends up winning, strictly because of the difference in the horses. In canon, Jake's horse is described as being older with some spunk, while Connor's horse is described as being the best pick since the horse served in the military. Therefore, I think Connor's horse gives him the speed that he needs to gain a narrow lead on Aiden and win immunity for himself. So who gets voted out? Well, I think Ali votes for Aiden since she tried to vote him out in the previous episode. I also think that Grett joins Ali in voting for Aiden. Now, this might seem questionable since Grett is known to be upset at Alec for voting with Yul in episode 13 and allegedly not saying anything to defend Grett from Yul's abuse. So you could make the argument that Grett would want to target Alec and would recruit Aiden and Connor to help her out since she helped them out by tipping them off about the plan to vote out Aiden at the last ceremony. That being said, the reason why I'm not going in that direction is because in canon, Grett was also upset that Rhea voted with Yul in episode 13 despite his abuse towards Grett. Yet Grett was still willing to work with Rhea at the final 5 to take out Jake and Connor even though Grett tipped them off about the votes going towards Jake at the previous ceremony. So, I don't think it's completely unreasonable for Grett to try and work with Alec to take out Aiden, since this more closely aligns with the events that happened in canon. And also, Grett might think that there's some lingering animosity between Alec and Connor due to their mutual adoration for Rhea, so Grett might feel comfortable going into the final 4 with both of them, believing that she could turn the 2 of them against each other at that point. Meanwhile, I think Connor and Aiden put their votes on Ali for her earlier betrayal, as well as the belief that Grett might still work with them since she warned them about the votes going towards Aiden in the previous episode. This leaves Alec as the swing vote, and as much as this surprises me, I think Alec actually sides with Connor and Aiden to take out Ali. After all, it's not like Alec has any serious emotional attachment to Ali or Grett. And since it's very possible that Grett and Alec's conversation from early in the canonical episode 15 still makes it into this timeline, Alec could be aware that Grett doesn't really like him. So, it makes more sense to weaken Grett by taking out her closest ally, while also siding with the guy who gave him much needed advice in episode 16. Also, Connor could easily tell Alec that Grett was the one that tipped him off about saving Aiden with the immunity totem in the previous episode, which would make Alec see Grett as a strategic threat and increase his desire to weaken her. Either way, Alec cast the decisive vote against Ali to blindside her by a vote of 3-2. Sorry Ali. I bet this is not gang. Now for episode 18. Before we get to the challenge, I want to set up some pre-challenge events. For Alec, Connor, and Aiden, they probably celebrate Ali's elimination and agree to work together to take out Grett next. Meanwhile, Grett realizes that she needs to act fast in order to save herself. And since I can see herself wanting to side with Alec due to his actions regarding Yul and his recent switching of sides, I think Grett would try and get Connor and Aiden against Alec. Grett would go to Aiden and try to convince him that Alec is a bigger strategic threat than she is, and that Connor might want to side with Alec over Aiden. While Aiden may not be as jealous as Jake, I think Aiden could realistically view Alec as a bigger strategic threat due to him being the spearhead of the villains' alliance. I could see Aiden bringing this up to Connor in hopes of getting him to change course and target Alec next, but I think Connor would refuse, not wanting to betray Alec now that they've rekindled their friendship. Now for the challenge. I think this comes down to how fast the campers can run and how well they use their shocks. Now we know from the episode 16 challenge that Alec and Connor are roughly just as fast as each other, and that Grett is faster than Rhea, who is faster than Alec and Connor. Therefore, Grett is probably faster than Alec and Connor. As for Aiden, the closest information that I could find to gauge Aiden's speed is that in the Season 2 premiere sprint to the camp, Aiden ran to the camp faster than Connor, and in episode 11 of Season 2, Aiden ran and made it to the cliffs faster than Rhea, although Rhea did pause to trip Hunter before starting her run, so you could argue that Rhea would have made it to the cliffs first if she started running at the same time as Aiden. Therefore, I think it's safe to say that Aiden would run faster than Connor, and thus, Alec by extension, but not faster than Grett. So, Grett has the advantage in speed. However, because both Connor and Alec want Grett out next, they would probably pile their shocks on Grett to slow her down. Meanwhile, Grett would probably shock Alec since she wants to target him next. As for Aiden, since Grett got in his head and convinced him that Alec is a bigger threat, I actually think Aiden shocks Alec, despite Connor's pleas to target Grett instead. With this setup, since Connor and Aiden don't get any shocks, I think one of them wins immunity. And since Connor didn't find any articles of clothing in canon, I highly doubt that Aiden can do worse than him, so Aiden probably wins this challenge. The only way Aiden doesn't win is if Alec directs his shocks towards Aiden after Aiden shocks him first. However, I think Alec is logical enough to not target Aiden even if Aiden targets him during the challenge. Because if Alec switches his shocks from Aiden to Grett, and Grett wins immunity as a result, then Grett and Aiden likely vote for him at the elimination ceremony. In that scenario, Alec's only hope of surviving is to beat Aiden in a tiebreaker, which might not even happen if Connor doesn't vote with him. So, Alec probably keeps most of his shocks on Grett, meaning that Aiden has a clear path to victory. And even if Alec gets one retaliatory shock on Aiden before Connor scolds Alec and tells him to think logically, I still think Aiden would have enough of a lead over Grett to win immunity, since Grett still gets 5 shocks in this scenario. So who gets voted out? Well, Grett votes for Alec due to her dislike for him, and Alec votes for Grett in response. I also think Connor votes for Grett due to his rekindled friendship with Alec. This leaves Aiden as the swing vote, and I genuinely don't know who he votes for in this spot. I do think Aiden pleads with Connor to vote for Alec, but Connor stands his ground, not wanting to sever his friendship with him. Ultimately, because of how Aiden expressed in episode 15 that he needed to start looking out for himself, I think he votes with Grett and forces a 2-2 tie between Alec and Grett, necessitating a tiebreaker. Now, Alec and Grett are actually decently close physically. Grett won 1 individual immunity challenge from episode 16, while Alec won 2 from episodes 10 and 12. Grett did better in the episode 13 challenge, but Alec also didn't have powers, so it's not the fairest comparison. Alec finished ahead of Grett in the episode 14 challenge, albeit not by much, so it's not the best evidence. Grett dropped out before Alec in this timeline's episode 15, but Alec also carried less weight than Grett, so that might balance it out. Grett also made it further in this timeline's episode 17, although that challenge was horse dependent and there's no guarantee that this tiebreaker would include horses. And I think both Grett and Alec did equally as poorly in this timeline's episode 18 since they kept shocking each other. So because it's so close between them, I feel like I have to pick the outcome that is better for the story. But now I face a new problem, because I don't really know what's better for the story. On one hand, Alec is more of this season's main antagonist in this timeline, so you could argue that it makes sense for Alec to make it to the finale so that the finale has some suspense with the villain in it. On the other hand, since Grett managed to convince Aiden to defy Connor's wishes by voting for Alec, we could also bring Grett to the finals and use the strained bond between Connor and Aiden as a source of drama for the finale. This is a really tough decision and I could easily go either way on this one. But ultimately, I feel like when looking at all the story arcs, Alec's story arc is pretty much done with Connor pledging to help Alec make some new connections. Meanwhile, if Grett were to directly eliminate Alec by beating him in a tiebreaker, that would serve as her revenge for Alec's decision to stick with Yul as an ally despite Yul's abusive behavior towards her. Therefore, my final decision is that Grett beats Alec in the tiebreaker and sends him out of the game, but not before he thanks Connor for his help and wishes him the best of luck in the finale. Episode 19 features the eliminated campers competing to help the 3 finalists in the finale, so this will take some work. Since Grett, Connor, and Aiden are in the finale instead of Ali, Rhea, and Jake, things can really change. Let's start with Jake. At this point, I'll assume he sticks with Tom since he and Tom promised to clear the air once the game was over. If Jake sticks with Tom, then that means that he'll probably be near Tom when he's digging in the ground near Alec and Fiore. And due to Tom and Jake's rebuilt bond, I can imagine Jake coming to Tom's defense when Alec tackles him. This would give Fiore a clear path to claim the first totem for herself, just like in canon. For Ali, I think she would stick with Hunter and Tess, which is interesting because in canon, Hunter and Tess tried to reach the roof of the motel, but they couldn't because they were one person short. However, since Ali is with Hunter and Tess now, they should be able to work together to get someone to the roof. And my guess is that Ali is the one that reaches the roof, since Hunter is probably at the bottom of the pile due to his strength, and Tess's status as a support character would make her want to support Ali as she reaches the roof. Now in canon, Ashley and Lake were able to get Aiden onto the roof to try and get the totem. But since Aiden is a finalist, that means he's not there to get onto the roof to find the totem, meaning that Ashley and Lake are one person short. This gives Ali a clear path on the roof to grab the totem herself. Now you might say, why isn't Nina involved in this since she was involved in this section in canon? Well, Nina only got involved when Hunter threw her up to the roof so Aiden wouldn't have a clear path to the totem. But since Ali is alone on the roof in this timeline, there's no reason for Hunter to throw Nina onto the roof, since there's nothing stopping Ali from getting the totem. And since I don't think Ashley or Lake is desperate enough to grab Nina and throw her on the roof, Ali probably gets the totem with very little obstacles. But what about the third totem? In canon, Yul only found the third totem on the stairs when he went to apologize to Grett, which only happened because James convinced him to apologize. However, since Grett is a finalist in this timeline and isn't here to cook the burgers, she's not here to trip Yul and burn his face. And if his face doesn't get burned, I don't think Yul becomes desperate enough that James has to go and set him straight. Which means that Yul doesn't go and apologize, and thus, doesn't find the totem. However, I previously made a solution to this exact situation in my previous What If video, so I'll just use that instead. That solution is to replace the James and Yul conversation with an Ellie and Rhea conversation by the pool, where Ellie fails to convince Rhea that being evil for money isn't worth it. This makes sense since Ellie went to search by the pool in canon, and Rhea likes to tan, so it's reasonable for both of them to be by the pool and be in sight of the totem on the stairs. Seeing this totem causes them to race for it, and since episode 4 showed us that Rhea can beat Ellie in a battle for an item, Rhea probably beats Ellie and gets the third totem for herself. Also, if Ellie is in the pool while Rhea isn't, then Ellie has to get out of the pool before running to the totem, which will take longer than Rhea, who only has to run since she's standing beside the pool. Therefore, Rhea should get the third totem. Now that the 3 totems have been found, we need to decide who supports who. Since Fiore found a totem first, she gets the first pick. And I think she probably picks Grett. We know that Fiore doesn't like Connor, and I don't think Fiore has had any significant interactions with Aiden. Meanwhile, Grett genuinely tried to help Fiore win in the season 1 finale, and I don't think Grett did anything bad to Fiore in this season. And they're both pretty annoyed with Yul, so maybe they would bond over that. As for Ali, I think she would pick Connor, strictly because I think she's more annoyed by Aiden at this point, so picking Connor is picking the lesser of 2 evils. This means that Rhea has to help Aiden, which is hilarious because of how much these two hate each other. And Fiore also gets to give a disadvantage to one of the campers, and I'll guess that she gives it to Connor, because I really don't think that she has a high opinion of him. Now we're at the finale. Before we get into the challenge, let's figure out who each eliminated camper wants to support. This will come in handy once we get to episode 21, but I think it's fine to do it now. In this scenario, I think Aiden gets the bulk of the support with 7 campers on his side. James is Aiden's boyfriend, so he's an obvious pick. Lake is Aiden's close friend, so she's an obvious pick. For Jake, I considered putting him with Connor, but the fact that Jake and Aiden turned their relationship from enemies to friends, and when you consider that Jake seemed really touched when Aiden admitted that he preferred him over Ali in episode 15, I think Jake would support Aiden. And since Ashley and Tom are close to Jake, I have them supporting Aiden as well. As for Yul, I only have him supporting Aiden because he's the only finalist that I'm pretty sure he doesn't outright hate. He made his hatred of Connor clear, and he probably loathes the fact that Grett made it further than him. So even though he's probably not fond of Aiden, he's still a better option than the other 2 finalists. And for Rhea, she's only on his side because she has to help him in the final challenge. Otherwise, she would probably be on Grett's side. As for Connor, I think he gets 5 supporters. Alec is an easy pick since the 2 of them rekindled their friendship near the end of the season. Miriam probably supports Connor since she helped Connor expose the villains alliance early in the season. Ali supports Connor because she's his designated helper, and Hunter and Tess join Ali to support Connor as a result. This leaves Grett with 3 supporters. Gabby definitely supports Grett since they're friends, and Ellie probably joins Gabby due to their relationship. And for Fiore, she's there because she's Grett's helper in the challenge, but even if she wasn't, she'd probably support Grett anyway. Now let's jump straight into the challenge. Since there's no evidence to suggest that Connor, Grett, or Aiden are good at mining, we can only go off the mining skills of Ali, Fiore, and Rhea. And all 3 of them did well, even with Rhea having toy tools in canon. And I know that Ali actually has the toy tools in this timeline, but let's be real. If the high-class Rhea can brute force her way towards getting 10 gems using toy tools, Ali should be able to do it too. I think it's safe to assume that they're all tied heading into the section where Emily releases the scorpions on them. This leads them to the tunnel, which eventually starts caving in due to the scorpions. Since I established in a previous What If video that Grett and Connor are too morally sound to leave anyone in the cave, and adding that Aiden is also probably too morally sound to do the same thing, if one duo manages to make it out of the tunnel before the rocks start falling, just like Rhea and Yul did in canon, I think that duo would want to go back and save the others. So no matter which duo gets out first, I think they go back and save the others. They then get attacked by scorpions, Trevor and Derek save them, and then Emily gets attacked by the scorpions, just like in canon, leaving the 3 duos to reach the final climb to the surface. By this point, who actually wins? I'll be honest, I'm going to make a really bold decision, and it's probably going to be a little unpopular, but I just can't shake the feeling that this would happen. Call me crazy, but I think regardless of the order in which the duos exit the cave first, I think Rhea will intentionally try to sabotage either Aiden or Connor in an attempt to stop one of them from making it to the finale. And this could easily play into the plot of the episode. Continuing from the previous episode, Connor could confront Aiden about taking out Alec when the actual plan was to take out Grett. Aiden would insist that he did what he thought was right and that he was trying to play his own game. With some manipulation from Grett, this could cause Aiden and Connor to split, motivated by Aiden's desire to actually play his own game after riding James's coattails in the previous season. Now that Aiden is motivated to play his own game and beat Connor, Rhea gets excited and starts plotting with Aiden to make Connor lose. However, after seeing the lengths that Rhea is willing to go to in order to ensure that Connor loses, Aiden realizes that playing his own game doesn't mean that he has to be cruel to Connor, which leads to Aiden and Connor making up during the challenge. This infuriates Rhea, since she's upset that Aiden is no longer willing to take down Connor. And after calling on the old quote, "If you want something done right, you better do it yourself," Rhea takes a sharp rock and cuts Connor's bag open, causing him to lose all his gems without anyone noticing, just like what happened to Ali in canon. All three duos get to the finish line in whatever order, where Connor realizes that he lost his gems, resulting in his elimination. Rhea thanks Aiden for giving her the idea to take down Connor, causing Aiden to blame himself for Connor's elimination. However, Connor assures Aiden that he doesn't blame him, and that now it's up to him to win the game and prove that he's capable of playing his own game and winning on his own, which is what he always wanted. Before we get to episode 21's challenge, let's take another look at who each camper supports. I think Grett and Aiden's original supporters stay the same, except for Rhea, who defects to Grett's team since Aiden made up with Connor in the previous episode. Connor and his supporters then get split up into the other two groups. Ali probably supports Grett since the two of them were pretty close before Ali's elimination. And by extension, Hunter and Tess probably support Grett as well. Connor sides with Aiden since they rebuilt their bond after the previous episode, and Alec probably joins him due to his closeness with Connor. As for Miriam, I guess she supports Aiden due to Miriam's closeness to Jake, as well as Aiden's relative hero status in the season. With these divisions, Aiden probably ends up with James and Tom as his helpers in the challenge. Don't get me wrong, Aiden probably picks James and Lake since he's closer to them, but I think Lake is the kind of person who would push Aiden to pick Tom due to Tom's physical capabilities. As for Grett, I think she definitely picks Gabby due to their friendship, but the second helper is a little bit unclear. I think Gabby would want to pick Ellie since they're dating, Ali would probably volunteer due to her closeness to Grett, and Rhea would probably volunteer due to Rhea's hatred for Aiden. It's a tough call, but I think Grett ends up picking Ali, since Ali is arguably a better physical competitor than Ellie and also doesn't like Aiden. Additionally, Grett may not be convinced that Rhea would help her win, as she was Aiden's helper and would get 100k if Aiden wins. Grett would need to feel confident that Rhea is willing to throw away 100k in order to see Aiden lose the competition. And to be fair, Rhea might actually be willing to do that, but I don't think Grett would take that chance. Therefore, Ali is Grett's second helper. Now we go into part 1 of the challenge, where the winner gets some upgrades for the final part of the challenge. The winner of the upgrades is a bit of a toss-up, since I think both sides are pretty equally matched. But I have to pick a winner, and ultimately, I think Aiden wins the upgraded sword and armor, and here's why. When you solely look at the physical strength of the two sides in this timeline, it's not that much different compared to the two sides in the canon timeline. Aiden and Jake are fairly similar, although Aiden may be a bit weaker. Tom is Tom, and James should be as strong, if not stronger than Ali, so Aiden and Jake's teams are relatively the same in terms of strength. And for the other side, Grett is probably just as strong, if not a bit stronger than Rhea, Ali is maybe a bit stronger than Ellie, and Gabby is debatably equal to Alec, if not stronger. So Grett's team is either just as strong as Rhea's team, or slightly stronger. When you look back at the canon finale, Rhea's team didn't beat Jake's team based on pure strength alone. Rhea's team only won because the tiger attacked Tom, which allowed Rhea to take out Ali, leaving Jake vulnerable to get hit by the arrows. Therefore, since Rhea's team wasn't able to beat Jake's team in canon based on pure strength alone, I'm not convinced that Grett's team will be able to beat Aiden's team based on pure strength alone if the teams are matched up 3 versus 3. Thus, I feel comfortable saying that this part of the challenge will go on until Crystal releases the tiger like she did in canon. This would cause Gabby to go and pet the tiger like she did in canon, which would prevent her from protecting Grett. Now that Grett is down a defender, Aiden's team can capitalize on their numerical advantage. James can hold off Ali, Tom can hold on to Grett like Alec did to Jake in canon, and Aiden can lead the archers over to Grett. And since Grett is being held in place by Tom, she can't run away, causing Grett to get hit by the arrows, meaning that Aiden wins the upgraded armor and shield. Now we head to the final section of the challenge. Since this is a physical fight, it's important to consider how strong each finalist is. We know that Grett is a well-known health influencer, so I think it's reasonable to assume that Grett is pretty strong. And considering that back in episode 4, she was able to maintain enough strength with one arm to hold onto the sandbag while she grabbed Ali's glasses, I think it's safe to say that her strength is above average. And this is on top of the fact that in this timeline's episode 15, Grett survived until she received her 4th set of weights, while Aiden fell after receiving his 2nd set of weights, so Grett has shown herself to be pretty strong in this timeline. I've seen some people say that Grett really isn't that strong since she could barely do a chin-up in episode 15. But to be fair, I think that there's a lot of people watching this right now who can't do a chin-up. That's right, I'm looking at you. The one wearing a comfy sweater while laying in bed and holding your phone above your face when you should be working on homework instead. Try and do a chin-up. It's hard, right? But enough of that tangent. The point is that struggling to do a chin-up doesn't automatically mean that you're weak, and there's enough evidence to combat the belief that Grett is weak. Meanwhile, there's not much evidence to suggest that Aiden is strong. He dropped immediately after receiving his second set of weights in episode 15, he couldn't steal a ball from Jake back in episode 9, and he easily fell over after Jake pushed him in episode 4. Although to defend Aiden a bit on the last point, his momentum was already forward at that point, so that probably made it harder to stand strong when he was pushed. Aiden's best physical showing is probably when he narrowly stopped the second-to-last ball from crossing into his team's goal in episode 7, which is better than what Ellie could do in that challenge. However, it's not like Aiden completely stopped the ball. He just slowed it down enough for it to not go in the goal. And even if we give him credit for preventing his team from being scored on while Ellie didn't, saying that Aiden is slightly stronger than Ellie isn't saying much. After all, Grett was able to knock Ellie off a platform in one hit back in Season 1, so if Aiden is only slightly stronger than Ellie, Grett shouldn't have a difficult time knocking Aiden off of a platform, which is exactly what the final challenge is. Therefore, I think we can conclusively say that Grett is stronger than Aiden, and even though Aiden does have a better sword and armor, I don't think that's going to give Aiden the strength he needs to beat Grett. As a result, I think Grett is able to somewhat easily outmuscle Aiden in the final challenge, winning herself the grand prize and the title of being the winner of Disventure Camp All-Stars. So we have our answer. If the Heroes Alliance saves Yul in episode 13 of season 3, Rhea is taken out instead of plot armoring her way to the finale, Jake is taken out after losing the final 7 immunity challenge, Grett gets revenge on Yul by orchestrating his demise at the final 6, Grett convinces Aiden to help her get revenge on Alec by taking him out at the final 4, and Grett goes on to win the season. I actually think this is a decent ending to the season. Narratively, Grett breaks up with Yul, then faces setbacks from Yul staying at the final 9 and losing Gabby at the final 8. However, Grett is able to regain her footing and survive the final 7, and subsequently orchestrates Yul's blindside at the final 6, getting revenge for his repeated abuse towards her. And after losing control of the game at the final 5, Grett uses her manipulation skills to force a tiebreaker and get her revenge against Alec for not actively supporting her in the face of Yul's abuse, before using her physical capabilities to win the season for herself. Unlike my last What If video, Grett isn't able to steamroll her way to the finals, and she actually has to face repeated conflicts throughout her journey en route to taking out her biggest adversaries and winning the grand prize for herself. And Aiden's storyline isn't too bad either. After losing his boyfriend and best friend at the first 2 elimination ceremonies and making a major enemy out of Jake, he's able to recover his footing, orchestrate the elimination of his #1 adversary, and become genuine friends with Jake, before going on to making his own moves and qualifying for the finale. Aiden doesn't really have to win in order for him to feel satisfied in his journey, since Aiden can still feel good knowing that he made it to the finale because of his own moves rather than someone else's. And while he's satisfied with that moral victory, Grett can remain satisfied as she's crowned the champion of Disventure Camp All-Stars after changing her life for the better, both from a personal standpoint and a relationship standpoint. And that about does it for this video. What do you think of my theory? Do you agree with my thought process? Do you disagree? Did I miss something big that would impact the entire video? Either way, please let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Thank you very much for watching. Click like if you like the video, click subscribe if you really like the video, and for some ending words of wisdom. Don't be afraid to hold on to your toys from your childhood. Because one day, you might need them to excavate jewels out of rock in your pursuit of a $3 million prize. Thank you, and farewell.